this. Hot mic, hot mic. Check one, check Fred.
I know it, I know it.
Yeah, that has to weigh on you a lot.
Oh, yeah, because I know it does. Those kids, you never know watching that.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Alexander Board of Education, October 22nd, 2020. I would like to call the meeting to order and have the roll call, please.
Mr. Barnes?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Here.
Mrs. Edis? And Mr. Regan?
Here.
And if everyone would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, if I can have a motion to adopt the agenda, please.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Edis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Okay, now that we've adopted the agenda, I'm going to pause for just a second. I want to turn the microphone, if I could, over to Fred. We recently lost a retired member of our staff for many years, Jeff Cullum, and I would like Fred to talk about all the years that Fred dealt and interacted with Jeff as superintendent and teacher. Fred, I'll turn the mic over to you, please.
Thank you, Jay. We just got word this past week that Jeff Cullum had passed away. Jeff was a former superintendent here at Alexander. I believe Jeff started out originally at Benton County and taught for about 12 years there. Then he came to Alexander for 2 years and went back to Benton County for their technology department. And 6 years later, he came back to Alexander as our elementary principal, and then ended up finishing as a superintendent. And for those of you that didn't know Jeff, he was a very quiet, mild-mannered man, had a deep dedication to kids, never seemed to get flustered. And he went through some tough times here at Alexander with budgets and everything else, but he was always an outstanding leader. And in all fairness, he left this world too early. He had just gotten into his retirement, and I know he did a lot of bicycling and on the bike path every day. So on behalf of the whole Alexander community, and his son teaches here, and daughter-in-law also, that we want to send our condolences and our heartfelt feelings for Jeff and his family, and thanks for all he done for Alexander.
Thanks, Fred. In keeping to this topic for just a second, I'm going to mention a couple additional thank yous for this past month since we last met. There have been a substantial amount of conversations, emails, meetings between the admin, the teachers, the the board, it's been really endless, I would say, over the last month since we last met in session. So first and foremost, again, as a board member, I want to thank the teachers, the administrators, the whole staff. It's really been phenomenal, the workload that has been put upon every one of you, and you're trying to recreate the wheel for a whole different day and age that we live in. So I don't want to go into a lot of detail of all that happened. I just would like the public to know that there were many, many hours and hours of effort by everyone to try to get this school back open and have kids and give the options which have been, discussed at length. So thank you to the admin, thank you to the staff, everyone listening at home. It did not go unnoticed, I know, by us. And one more thank you on behalf of me and the board is I'd like to thank the FFA and the FFA alumni headed up by Matt Bovin. I know most of you have not been in the school, so you're not seeing the dividers that the FFA and the alumni stepped up to the plate and made to help us with our distancing requirements. That they made dividers, and we have them throughout the school. So I really want to thank the FFA and the FFA alumni for their efforts. Thank you, Matt. And guys, if there's anybody else that I'm neglecting, please jump in. Now's the time I want to give our thank yous before we move on. Everybody good? Okay. Okay, so now we will move to the public participation for agenda items. And just a reminder, this is for agenda items only. We will do public participation for non-agenda items toward the end of the agenda. Any public participation related to agenda items? Okay, moving on. Number 5, so we have treasurer's recommendations. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the minutes of the September 16th, 2020 regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Edis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
B, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the financial report for the month ending September 30th, 2020.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Edis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
C, it is recommended the Board of Education authorize the treasurer to sell bus number 7 by bid, negotiated sale, or other necessary means.
Moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Edis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
D, it's recommended the Board of Education authorize the treasurer to scrap bus number 3 and bus number 40 in compliance with the requirements of the EPA Clean Diesel Rebate Program.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Edis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Item E, it is recommended the Board of Education approve the following budget and purpose statements for fiscal year 2021 from High School Student Council and Interact Club.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Edis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
F, it's recommended the Board of Education authorize the treasurer to dispose of the enclosed list of items that are broken and/or obsolete.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Edis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Okay, We have one addendum to the treasurer's recommendation, and it is item G. It's recommended the Board of Education approve the following transfers, and these are our normal school-wide pool transfers that we do routinely each month.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Okay, moving on to superintendent's recommendations. A, it is recommended the Board of Education approve the enclosed substitute aide and teacher lists as recommended by Athens Meg's ESC superintendent.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
B, it is recommended the Board of Education accept the enclosed letters of resignation from the following, Betsy Morgan and Samantha Pratt.
Moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan?
Yes.
C, it's recommended the Board of Education grant unpaid leaves of absences to the following, John Healy and Megan McGilligan.
Moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan?
Yes.
D, it's recommended the Board of Education employ the following supplementals for the 2020-21 school year pending their meeting all state and local requirements.
So
And
moved.
The list is quite long. It's part of the record, so I'm not going to read every name.
So moved. Second.
And just for clarification, I don't know if you noticed on the agenda there's for Corey Chapman, it just said as assistant varsity girls, supposed to have basketball on it. So just for clarification on that one.
Basketball rather than.
Okay, so Mr. Davis moved.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Item E, it is recommended the Board of Education employ the following, effective October 19th, 2020, pending their meeting all state and local requirements.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
F, it's recommended the Board of Education employ Whitney, is it Warren or Warren? What part of the county or country is she from?
Probably
Warren?
Oh, Warren.
Okay. What? She's a Warren. All right. So I'll start over. It's recommended the Board of Education employ Whitney Warren as school nurse effective October 1st, 2020 at BA Step 10 of the ELEA salary schedule for the 2020-2021 school year.
Moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan?
Yes.
And Whitney, if you're listening, welcome aboard. You've already got your feet wet, I know, the last few weeks, but you stepped into a role at a very critical time, and my hat's off to you. G, it's recommended the Board of Education approve the negotiated agreement with the ALEA through August 31st, 2021.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan?
Yes.
H, it's recommended the Board of Education approve the enclosed memorandum of understanding with ALEA regarding returning to work after a leave of absence.
So moved.
Oh, seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
I, it's recommended the Board of Education approve the enclosed memorandum of understanding with ALEA regarding remote learners.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes?
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
J, it's recommended the Board of Education authorize the treasurer to issue refunds to students who have planned to participate in the 2020 Washington DC trip, the Bahamas trip, and the France trip that were canceled due to COVID-19.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
K, it's recommended the Board of Education approve suspending the admission fee for junior high athletic events and allow for voluntary donations for the 2021 school year due to capacity restraints caused by COVID-19 pandemic.
Moved.
Seconded.
And just for clarification, before you guys vote, I talked to Mr. Dosick, and he said there's potential that we will not be, that they may have a plan to work around those, the capacity issue during winter, so they may be able to go back to charging for the winter events like they normally would.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
I said I talked to Mr. Dosick, and he said that he thinks that they might be able to get around the capacity issues that they had in the fall, where they had to clear the gym between the 7th and 8th grade, if they're able to relocate the games to the ARC. They won't have to clear the gyms between the 7th and 8th grade. They'll be allowed to stay, so then he would go back to charging as normal because it won't be any different than a normal year. So Mrs. Udis made the motion. Who was the second? I'm sorry. Josh? Okay. Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Item L, this is the first reading. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the revised policy and procedures manual. I'll make the motion since I spent a lot of time on the phone with the lawyers reviewing it.
I don't think we
Yeah,
need to. on
we
first reading.
actually, we don't
Oh,
need
okay.
any.
Never mind.
Yep. But you
Save
and
it for
Josh
next-
should be commended for, for all the time that you did go through and put in for that policy manual, so.
We'll do it next month, Jay. You
There
can,
we go.
you can move and I'll second.
All right, we have one more item that's an addendum to the superintendent's recommendations. Item M, it's recommended the Board of Education approve the transfer of Ben Giffen from 3-hour cook 1 to 3-hour custodial maintenance effective August 20th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Before we move on, there's one more shout out that I'd like to, I'll turn it over to Lindy here, but just last week, we had our head football coach turn in his retirement resignation letter. And Lindy, if you could give us a little bit of background of Coach Dean's, all of his experience and give back to the community here at Alexander and other places in Athens County that he has coached. We'd like to formally recognize Coach Dean for all his accomplishments and dedication to the district.
I think it's on. Is it on? Just
Coach Eric Dean has been with us the past 4 years and has done a very nice job taking over our football program. He has spent 31 years in Athens County building Little League football programs and working with high school teams. Eric came to us from Nelsonville, York, where he built the Nelsonville, York Little League football program. He's put in 31 years working with children and school districts to build these programs, and he has decided to retire and spend more time with his family. Eric has done a very nice job with our football program, and he's been a very good role model for our children. He wanted the players to know first, but he did give us notification a couple days before. But we'd like to thank Eric for all the time and hard work and dedication he has put into our program here at Alexander.
Okay, thank you, Lindy. Do we have any business initiated by board members?
You know, I think it would just be remiss of us if we, Lindy, do you have any updates as far as, I know we're 4 days into our restart. What has, in that time, what has gone on, how well has it gone? Just a public overall view of where we are at this stage in this unprecedented time.
Yes, we are into 4 days of in-class, in-person learning. We started Monday. We the administration met Friday afternoon to make sure we had everything in place, that we were ready to roll. Are we missing anything? We made sure we had additional staffing in every department as backup, which has been excellent. Even with the substitute teachers, we booked extra. If they didn't have a class to be in, they were our floaters, walking the hallways, checking on teachers, making sure kids knew where they were going. The bus routing has been going fine. Each department seems to be doing well. A little overloaded at first, but we're looking at the plan, and if we have to make some adjustments, we will. We spent 2 hours in an administrative meeting this morning going over what's working, what's not working, what do we think we need to tweak a little bit. But overall, amazingly well. Very quiet in the hallways. The kids are adjusting, and we know this is an adjustment period for them. So it was nice to do the soft opening, half the students on Monday, half on Tuesday, and bring majority in on Wednesday. Technology, we still have our issues. We did get notice that the Chromebooks that were back ordered are now sailing their way to Ohio, so that was a nice positive. Traffic control outside, I received nice emails from parents that they thought it was flowing nicely. Officer Childs radioed in. He's been out there in the mornings helping direct traffic, and he gave us a good report on that also. I did find out that there will be free breakfast and lunch for the remainder of the school year. So that was really nice to know where it's not January 1st anymore. Free breakfast and lunches to all students through the school year till June.
I thought it would be remiss of us if we didn't mention something, because it does mean something when they have 1, 2, 3, 5 people in attendance. To me, as was said at School Board 101, that means you've done something right. So.
Thank you. It's been a lot of work, but the staff really pulled together and realized that we've got to come up with a plan. It may not be perfect, but we will get these doors open and roll. And I think we've done that very nicely.
Right, and not just here in the school, but the community as well. Everybody, I think that means everybody knows that everybody has some type of, there's going to be kinks, and everybody's actually being understanding of that. So it's really nice to see, as opposed to what you see a lot of times these days. But so thank you. I know Jay had said it. Thank you, everybody, not only in this building, but all over the streets of our community. So, cool.
Any other board-initiated business comments? Board reports? Okay, hearing none, now we will go to public participation for non-agenda items. Okay, hearing no public participation, our next scheduled meeting is November 18th. Is that a Wednesday again? Need to push it? Tuesday or Thursday?
That would be best.
Does that fit your retirement schedule, Fred?
Thursday's my retirement, alternate retirement day.
Okay, Thursday?
I can come Thursday.
Let's do Thursday. All right,
You
so
just bring a turkey.
19th. Okay, so our next regularly scheduled meeting will be November 19th at 7 PM. Here again in the cafeteria? Or do we want to
Up to you guys.
keep them here for a few more meetings?
I think here's a good idea.
All right, so November 19th, 7 o'clock here again, and hearing no other business, I have a motion to adjourn. We didn't vote.
So move.
All right, got Fred's motion.
Second.
Blake second, Fred motion.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.